I'm Frank Garza, and welcome to Here and Abroad, a podcast that follows the U.S. men's national team and their player pool across Europe, MLS, or wherever else they play their club football. This summer, Aidan Morris completed a transfer from the Columbus Crew to Middlesbrough in the English Championship. And on today's show, we're going to discuss how things are going for Morris so far at his new club. To help me do that, I've invited Craig Johns to join the show. Craig is the Middlesbrough FC reporter for the Gazette Teesside Live. Craig, welcome to the show.
Hey, Frank. Thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on here. It's Aidan Morris is a big fan favorite over here for those of us who follow MLS. So I'm excited to get your thoughts on him. Middlesbrough has played 4 matches already this season. Looks like Morris has started every single one of them. So, what's your first impressions of him so far?
Yeah, really, really positive. I think you mentioned there, he's a fan favourite for yourselves over in the States and very quickly on Teesside here, establishing himself as such here too. They've already got a chant in the terraces for him, and he's very quickly made himself a popular player among supporters, and that speaks volumes, I think, about how quickly he settled in at Middlesbrough, and his kind of style on the pitch as well. I think Middlesbrough were crying out really for a central midfielder with a bit of aggression. I think here in the northeast of England in particular, supporters really take to kind of aggressive players who aren't afraid to get stuck in, and four appearances so far, and Aidan's certainly shown that side to him, a real determination to his game, which Middlesbrough fans have really particularly enjoyed about him.
What's the chant?
So it's
that they have
it's the Estelle American Boy chant. So
okay,
a bit of an obvious one, but yeah, Morris, our American Boy, is what they started singing for him.
I think if I remember correctly, I think Brendan Aronson had something like that over at Leeds too.
Yeah.
With the fans. I have to tell you, I was pretty surprised how quickly he kind of got into the starting lineup. I was expecting a transition period where it kind of took him a while to firmly establish himself. I mean, were you surprised at how quickly he got in there and how much of a contribution he's made already?
Yeah, 100%. I think usually that would be the case, and I think particularly at Middlesbrough now they tend to try and give new signings a bit more time to settle. Obviously, head coach Michael Carrick was a midfielder himself, and he plays in a tactical way that has quite a lot of intricate details and a lot to learn for new players. So, he tends to allow them a little bedding in period. I think there was the advantage that Morris had obviously already started an MLS season, so fitness wasn't really a concern there when he arrived in Middlesbrough. And because it was so early in our off-season, our pre-season, he essentially had that kind of 2-month period where he was able to bed in and play a few friendly matches, learn his teammates, learn his new tactics. And I think that's obviously helped him then make the start that he has at Middlesbrough. The kind of the biggest thing for him, I don't think he would have started the season in the lineup, but for the fact that the captain Johnny Howson picked up an injury in the final friendly of the season. Morris came off the bench in that final friendly to replace Johnny Howson. He actually hit the bar in that game as well, was really close with a good effort. He looked bright. And with that, Michael Carrick just had the faith to kind of then stick him in for the first game. They beat Swansea in that game. It's actually the first time in 10 years Middlesbrough have won the first game in the season. Morrison was really good on that day, just settled in seamlessly to the team and looked like he'd been there for a long, long time, to be fair to him, for what was his debut. And as a result of that, he's justifiably stayed there in the team so far.
Yeah, you mentioned the coach, Michael Carrick there. Can you talk a little bit more about how he's utilizing Morris, position-wise, tactically? What does he have Morris doing on the pitch?
Yeah, so he doesn't like Michael Carrick to kind of talk about formation and tactics in the way that you might traditionally, but I think the easiest way to kind of classify the way Middlesbrough line up under Carrick is a 4-2-3-1 system, though it is very fluid and does move about a lot depending on whether they have possession and whether they don't. But Morris is very much one of the two central midfielders who, so far, he tends to have been the one who sits a little deeper. He's been playing alongside Aidan Hackney, who is a player of similar profile. He's 21. He came through Middlesbrough's academy. He's a local boy, and he's very much touted as a future star, similar to Aidan Morris, a youth international like Aidan Morris, and somebody who is on the radar of a lot of Premier League clubs. I think because of Morris's aggression, which, as I say, I think Middlesbrough really needed someone in midfield with that side of the game. It's allowing Hackney to get on the ball and do what he likes to do, which is drive forward with it. And while Morris is certainly not, kind of deterred from doing that, he will do it in the right moments. I think Morris has very much established himself in Middlesbrough's two-man midfield as the more deeper lying of the two central midfielders. He'll sit a bit more. He looks comfortable in possession. He can just get it and lay it off in whatever way he wants. You notice because Middlesbrough try to play a style where they play out from the back and it's constantly on the ground. They don't like to go long. So Morris is very, very much somebody looking to kind of drop a bit deeper and receive the ball as well, and then move it forward. But I think certainly where he's excelled early in his Middlesbrough career has been in his kind of aggressive, dogged, determined nature when they aren't in possession, and he's been really good at kind of quickly winning possession back for them.
Yeah, that sounds all very familiar from what we saw at the Columbus Crew. What about the fact that here he's come to a new club, new country? He's a young guy. How do you see him adapting so far to this, all these new circumstances and a new culture? How does he appear to be adapting?
Yes, I've got to say, it's been one of the kind of most impressive things about it. I think, particularly in England's top two tiers, when players come from leagues outside of England, we often kind of think about the need for a bedding in period, some time to settle into the league. I think one thing that often gets noted with kind of experts in England is that or indeed with players coming from foreign countries, they'll often talk about the tempo of the game in England, even in the Championship, and also the physicality of it. And that often foreign players will come and say we needed a bit of time to adapt to that. That was very different to what we were used to. But from the moment I remember first seeing Aidan play for Borough in the first friendly of the summer, and the first thing that struck me was how stocky he was. He's not tall by any means. He's got a broad kind of chest and shoulders, and he is a very stocky player. And for the moment they played that first game against Bolton Wanderers, who are a division down from Borough, he just looked somebody who was well up for that battle. If he did lose the ball in that game early on, where maybe the tempo of the game was a bit of a shock to him, the determination, as I mentioned, to quickly get the ball back and kind of not be pushed off the ball a second time was just plainly obvious to see. And I think the way he has kind of maybe used what he came up against and what he saw in pre-season to get used to the English game and take that into the start of the season has been really impressive. Because as I said, it can often take players coming to Middlesbrough in particular in recent seasons under Michael Carrick a couple of months to adapt and get used to the way they play, but also the division they're playing. Whereas I say it is a fast tempo and it is a physical league as well. There are a lot of physical challenges, and of course there's also this week we've got a game on Tuesday evening, having only just played on Saturday and be playing on Saturday again. Those kind of 3-game weeks are very common here in England, which I don't think are very common elsewhere, certainly not to the extent and regularity that they are in England. And again, Morris has started all 4 games so far, and I would expect him to start again on Tuesday and then Saturday after that. He seems to have just adapted so well to it. That's on the pitch, of course. The other side of that is off the pitch, and we were just speaking with him recently about that actually, and I mean, he's 22-year-old and he's moved a long way from home. His family did come across actually for his debut against Swansea, which he spoke about after that one as being, a really kind of nice moment for him to know his family were there for that one. But given the distance, that's not going to be possible for his family to be there for every game. And yeah, he's moved over completely by himself. Teesside is quite certainly where the footballers on Teesside live. It's quite an isolated area. It's not exactly close to London, the capital, or anything like that. So I would imagine off the pitch, and I think he did mention himself that off the pitch, there's still a bit of settling to do. I'm sure he'll find his feet. He's praised people at the club, be it teammates or coaches, for kind of helping him as best they can so far. But certainly I would imagine off the pitch and, the moments when he leaves the club, when training finishes, etc., matches finished, I'm sure that's when he'll probably will be finding it a bit tougher, because I'm sure it'll be quite lonely for him in these early stages.
Yeah. What about the U.S. men's national team? Has he spoken about that at all since he's been over there, and what his ambitions are around that team?
So from memory, I don't. He certainly hasn't in there. We've spoken to him a couple of times now after games, and it certainly hasn't come up in those conversations. But I'm trying to think back. The club always do. I would assume most clubs do a first interview with the player after they've signed, and it seems to ring a bell that in that one he did mention the national team and that being a priority. I know obviously the USA were in the Olympics this summer, and there was talk that he might have been included in that squad. He ended up obviously not being involved in the end, but I think there was. A lot of that was to do with the fact that he was making this move to Middlesbrough, and I think from what I'm hearing is that there was kind of a mutual decision on both sides, USA and Morris and Middlesbrough, in that it would probably be better suited for him to kind of come get pre-season under his belt, as we've already spoken about the advantages of him being able to do that at Middlesbrough, to kind of aid his settling in and bedding in period here. With, I think, the future in mind. Obviously would have been nice, I'm sure, to play in the Olympics at Paris, but I would imagine his goal and USA's goal is to get him in that senior side. And of course now Pochettino in charge, he knows English football so well, so no reason why Morris can't be targeting that.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens in this upcoming September international window, and then there's another one in October. Yeah, you mentioned Pochettino coming in, new coach, so clean slate for everybody. The more defensive holding midfield, there is a need for the U.S. men's national team with Tyler Adams, who's been kind of the, incumbent, what you will, but he's been injured for so long. And so there's really nobody that's come in and kind of grabbed that spot, on the U.S. And now with Morris kind of, making this transition so seamlessly to the championship and playing so well, you got to think he's put himself in a good position to be considered. We'll see what happens when Pochettino comes in.
Yeah, he seems such a kind of confident and determined character as well. And yeah, I know from kind of reading stuff when Middlesbrough were first trying to sign him that obviously playing for the men's national team of the USA was a big goal of his, and something he obviously was very keen to do. So I would imagine he'll relish that opportunity, and no doubt he'll be aware of the things you've just said, and the kind of space in the team, the gap in the team, and that'll no doubt be driving him on even more. And as I said, the standard of the English Championship now, you've got some very good teams in that division, and it's a very, very kind of tough league to compete in. So as Pochettino will well know, and will no doubt be aware that if Morris is doing well in that league, then he's certainly got something about him.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit more about, Middlesbrough as a club. I'm thinking of fans who might be, watching or listening to us, who are maybe starting to tune in to more games to watch, Aidan Morris. And I think fans certainly turned in a couple of seasons ago when Zach Steffen, was there, as the goalkeeper. But if you had to give us like a Middlesbrough 101, who are would you say the most important players, on the club? Could you talk us through maybe what the expectations, are, for this season, and things like that?
Yeah, so Middlesbrough are very much there's a lot of clubs like this now in the Championship, such as the way it's gone in recent years. But they're a club who had a long period in the Premier League. Brian Robson, formerly of Manchester United, and then Steve McLaren in charge. They had a very long period in the Premier League, and they were considered golden years for the football club, really, having nearly gone out of existence in 1986. And they went through a difficult period after that, and they've only had one season in, I think it's now the last 15 years, possibly more, where they have been in the Premier League, and they've kind of come down. And certainly this season now, it's their 8th season consecutively in the second division. But for all of that period, the ambition and the goal has and always will be to get back to the Premier League. It's where every English club wants to be. There's so much money involved in being in the Premier League, and it's such a big gap between the Premier League and Championship as far as finances are concerned. But beyond finances, exposure and things like that as well. The Premier League has such a global market in comparison to the Championship. So certainly everything that's happening at Middlesbrough, signing players like Aidan Morris, young, plenty of growth potential, but also already has a lot of experience on his CV, having played so many times already for Columbus Crew. Those are the type of signings that Middlesbrough are trying to make, because I mentioned the finances. They're not many Championship clubs are in a position where they can go and sign players who you would maybe consider to be the finished product, or the already a star. They're trying to sign players like Morris, who they believe they can bring in and make a star. This season I think Middlesbrough are very much one of the favourites to go up as well. I think if players like Morris and a couple of the others who they've signed this summer can have the positive seasons that they are hope to have, then it could be quite an exciting season for Middlesbrough, because this does feel one of the more open Championship seasons in comparison to previous years. They have a lot of very good players. They have there's a young Dutch centre back that they've got called Rav van den Berg, who he signed for Middlesbrough last summer and had a fantastic first year at the club. But in signing for Middlesbrough, he turned down huge clubs at Juventus, Dortmund, Bayern Munich, Liverpool. These kind of clubs were in for him. But his attitude was, if I go there, I'll be a reserve player, I'll be a youth player. If I go to Middlesbrough, I'll play, and that proved the case. He won Player of the Year last season, and all those clubs I just mentioned, they're still tracking him. But for now, he's going to remain at Borough. Striker Manuel Latiolaf is such a huge part of the plans as well. He's an Ivorian who they brought in from Atalanta last summer in Italy. And he had a difficult time. We talked about the difficulties in kind of bedding in early on at Middlesbrough and in the English Championship. His body didn't quite react well to it at the start of last season. And he had a couple of injuries along the way, but once he got used to it, once he bedded in, he finished the season with 18 goals, and there's kind of expectations this season that he'll hopefully kind of hit the 20 plus mark, which is always held up as the kind of target for any really good striker, is to hit 20 plus goals. So real hope that he'll do that. And Aidan Morris's midfield partner I previously mentioned as well, Hayden Hackney, similar mould, similar kind of stage of his career to Morris, 22, youth international, and really touted for kind of bigger things in the game at one point in the future. But for now, a real star in this Middlesbrough team, and someone Borough hope can kind of drive them on to glory.
Well, they'll be fun to watch. I mean, they always seem to be kind of knocking at the door of, getting into the either, making it into the promotion playoffs, or getting close. I think they fell just short last year, right? Okay. I guess one other thing I want to ask you about is if there's any kind of behind the scenes personal stories, anecdotes you could share about Aidan Morris from your brief time, covering him, that you think fans might enjoy hearing about.
Yeah, so I think the one thing that springs to mind, I mentioned we've spoken to him twice already, and most recently it was at a fan event. They had an open training session at the ground last week, and fans were able to turn up. A lot of kids there, for players to kind of sign autographs and take pictures and everything. And naturally, Aidan proved really popular. I think every kid there wanted a picture with Aidan. But after doing that, he kind of came and had a conversation with ourselves as we were there waiting, and we were talking a bit about his career and how he got into football, etc. The kind of obvious questions that you probably get asked as an American who is involved in soccer, because it's obviously not the kind of number one sport in America like it is here in England. And but he started talking about the fact that when he was a boy, he grew up a Manchester United fan, and Michael Carrick therefore was kind of somebody who he watched a lot. And now of course he's manager, and it springs to mind Matt Crooks, who is now of course playing in the MLS with Real Salt Lake. When he was at Middlesbrough and Michael Carrick first arrived, he was a boyhood Man United fan too. And Matt Crooks kind of spoke about, he was a little starstruck at first when Carrick came in. He was a bit like, whoa, that's Michael Carrick. and I asked, with that in mind, I asked Aidan, was he similar? Is he still a bit like starstruck? Is he still a bit taken aback by the fact that he's now being coached by Michael Carrick? This is in his generation, one of the best midfielders in the game. And I absolutely loved Aidan's response, because it summed up what we've seen of him in a Borough shirt so far. He basically just said, no, work is work, it's business now. There was no element of being awestruck by Michael Carrick. It was he basically said, I love working with him, I'm taking everything in like a sponge, but it's business, this is work, and I'm here to do a job for Middlesbrough. It doesn't matter who the head coach is. And yeah, I love that attitude. It was that real kind of determination and almost, I don't know how to describe it, like just attitude of like, I'm the best, I'm here to be the best, and I'm going to be the best. It was a really good answer.
It was time to get to work. Yeah. Is what he said, and it looks like he's been doing that. I mean, it's been exciting. We've been talking. There's been so much talk about him moving over to Europe. I'd say for the last couple of seasons, we've all been kind of waiting for it, and to see him make the move and be doing so well, it's been awesome to see. Well, Craig, thank you so much for joining the show. I'll make sure and put links in the show notes to your X account, which is at Craig_Johns, and also to your work at the Gazette Teesside Live. Thanks so much for joining the show.
No, thanks very much, and hopefully we continue seeing nothing but positive things about Aidan going forward.
Yeah, I hope so. And thanks to everyone for listening to Here and Abroad. If you enjoyed the episode, please do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, or that follow button if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or somewhere else. Thank you so much. I'm Frank Garza. You can follow me on X at FrankGarza007, and I'll be back next week with a new episode.